Welcome to the 2017 EIFS Industry Members Association Annual Meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the EIFS Industry Members Association, R. Michael Murphy.
Thank you. Thank you. Boy, we've come a long way, haven't we? That was quite an opening video. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Murphy, President and CEO of Drive It, and also honored to be the 2016 and 2017 President of this great association. So welcome all to here to beautiful Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. The general session is officially started. I hit the gavel. I did that for Dave. For some reason, Dave likes that. Anyway, to start things off, I'd like to first introduce Jeff Gilmore, who's our legal counsel, and Jeff's just going to go through the guidelines of antitrust. I think we'd like it if you would, though. If you. No, thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Well, thanks, Jeff. We have a great 2.5 days. We have a lot of terrific information that we're going to share with you, and so we have a jam-packed program. Before we get started, I did want to take a time to first introduce the EIMA Board of Directors. And so when I call your name, why don't you stand up, and then at the end we can all give a hand for these fine people that are helping us every day. First, we have the Vice President of the Board, Mr. Bill Wagner of Dow Construction Chemicals. And Bill represents the associate members. Next, we have Mr. Dave Boyven of Stowe Corp., who serves as treasurer of the board. Peter Dashiell of BAS Wall Systems, who serves as secretary of the board. Here's Pete. And Mr. Buck Buchanan of Parex, who serves as the manufacturer's director. There's Buck. And Dave Neff of Manning Materials, who serves as our voting director representing the EIFS distributors. So let's have a round of applause for all those guys. I wanted to say a few things first before we get started. We have some great guest speakers this afternoon. But one of the things I was thinking about this morning, thinking about this meeting and thinking about all the meetings that have come before this meeting, the future for EIFS is really incredible when you stop and really think about it. And I'm sure that all the companies in this room are doing very well right now as the economy starts to recover. And I think about this industry and how much this industry can grow and can help each of our individual businesses if we continue to support the industry and we continue to support EIMA. And so it's very important going forward that we continue to get the great support that we get from everyone in this room. And hopefully we'll be able to bring more and more people into the organization and just help our industry continue to grow. And so it's very, very important and very appreciated that everyone made the big effort to come out and spend some time with us and hopefully learn a little bit. As I said, we have a few speakers today. First off, I would like to introduce Carter Benjamin of Winlock. And Carter, could you please come up and introduce our first speaker?
How come I didn't get the, please welcome up Carter Benjamin? I love that. That sounded really impressive, Mike. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Scott, again, told me that I had to get up and do an introduction, and I told him I'd try to keep it down to about an hour or so, keep us on task and all that. And he said, come on, Carter, be a hero, get up there and do it. And I said, okay, as long as I don't have to wear tights in my outfit, on my hero outfit, then I'm good to go. Trust me, you don't want to see me in tights. So we're good to go here. But a year ago we met, and the board of directors and the communication committee put together, and we hired a PR group, and they presented some of the concepts to you last year at last year's meeting. And for those of you who weren't at the meeting, you're in for a real treat to get an update as to where we are. So it gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce Jocelyn Fagan and Michelle DeHaven with Function.
Hi, we're Function, and we're into building things. We'd like you to consider us your creative and communication heroes. We're here today and every day to help highlight the heroic efforts EIMA and its members have made this past year. Last year, EIMA revealed a big secret. EIFS is a hero hidden in plain sight. This powerful message set the scene for EIMA to highlight the many ways EIFS provides more benefits than any other cladding system, providing a clear path of differentiation. From design flexibility and durability to moisture control, energy efficiency, testing, and energy codes, EIFS allows architects, contractors, building owners, and more to unlock powerful hero potential. Heroes are also headline grabbers, known to capture attention and hold the public eye, and ensuring that the right people read the headlines is critical. We work to identify the top 500 architects across the United States, as well as key media targets. We plan to continue studying their interests to provide the most relevant content possible to help meet their needs. EIMA has spread its message through advertisement, direct mail, well-earned media interviews and coverage, social media, and more. And this is just the beginning. We anticipate additional media coverage, social engagement, and advertisement reach throughout the year. Like all heroes, EIMA and Function continue to move forward, working hard to excel against challenges and to uphold the integrity of the building industry by helping promote best building practices. So where are we headed? What's next? An in-depth plan has been developed to execute an exciting campaign that shows, through content and supporting visual materials, why mesh matters, underscoring the idea that it does great things. That's why EIMA members carefully qualify the mesh they specify. Other mesh may look the same, but thanks to EIMA and its members, builders and contractors will no longer be led to trust a counterfeit substitute. This message will be carried through articles, webinars, trade show tactics, videos, and more. This campaign will be a key focus in 2017, working to make EIMA a go-to thought leader on mesh composite materials. And of course, we will have an ongoing focus on our hero. This includes additional informational articles, media interviews, videos, and updated advertisements to drive the concept home. Please continue to share ideas, projects, information, and feedback. We look forward to elevating these exciting initiatives together in 2017. There's a hero in all of us.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us today.
Welcome to the 2017 EIFS Industry Members Association Annual Meeting.
We're really excited to be here today. I'm Michelle. I'm Jocelyn. And we are Function.
It's on now.
So we wanted to take a few moments to kind of start off by looking at some of the different heroic efforts that we have put together and worked on for EIMA over 2016, and kind of start with a little bit, taking a look at some of the goals, just kind of recapping. So we wanted to position EIMA for increased specification,
Increased visibility for EIFS and EIMA.
demonstrate how EIFS contributes to better building practices, especially durability and sustainability,
Enroll new members.
and create conversations and build trust. So we've had a lot of really good results that we're really excited to share with you. As far as the Hero landing page, we had 2,799 visits to that landing page, which is great.
Yeah, according to the information we received, it was the #1 viewed landing page, so that's exciting news.
Got a lot of traction there. And also for the EIFS versus brick page, 1,173 visits.
And it was also the #1 post on the website, on the blog pages. And for those of you who might not be familiar with these items, there's blue handouts on your table. If you flip them over, those have the infographics that we are referring to. And those have been posted on the EIMA site.
EIFS versus stucco also had a lot of visits with 1,322.
Looking through the social engagements with the Hero campaign, the infographics, and other images, there were hundreds of engagements across all of the platforms. We've also done several media meetings at trade shows to kind of further spread the message with that audience.
We really focused on education, and as you can see in some of those infographics, we really wanted to kind of show how EIFS versus stucco, the comparative benefits, also to metal as well as to brick.
So kind of moving forward, like we teased in the video, we're really going to spend some time looking at the future of our hero. We have currently secured an article opportunity. We're going to keep promoting those infographics. We've been sending them to various publications, and Scott's been doing a great job of sharing them on social media. They've been getting a great deal of interest, so we're going to continue to move those forward as well and continue that educational aspect.
We're also going to develop different news nuggets that can be posted, through the blog post, infographics, and news updates.
Podcasts. I don't know how many of you all listen to them, but they're pretty big in the industry and they're growing more and more. They're a really good way to educate the audience and to let them know what you want to talk about and not have them commit to a certain frame of time. So with webinars, you usually have to set out an hour or so of your time. Podcasts you can download. We can send them out to people on a weekly basis, monthly basis, and it's something that they can listen to from the convenience of their car, going to job sites, or sitting at their desk working on projects. So that's something that we would like to do to further educate the audience in the coming year.
Yeah, and they really are popular because of that. There's a huge trend towards the podcast because of the ease of use.
And these are just some of the topics that we are talking about putting out there.
Utilizing EIFS for better building practices, hiding in plain sight, testing, and testimonials. We're also going to be doing some Q&A sessions.
These will allow the audience to ask EIMA and other members and building experts questions regarding EIFS-related topics. These can be shared via social media as well as to regular trade media and industry media. Some of the ideas we've had is create a EIMA personality to do these interactions, spokesperson, figurehead type person that people can start relating to. Also, members can submit questions that they get and answers that they give so that we can build up that database of information and share that out with the audience as well.
Yeah, so anything you have on that, if there's some questions you want to get involved with, that would really help us as well so that we can make sure that we're kind of generating those conversations.
Video promotion is another thing we've been talking about. Obviously, you've seen now 2 really good videos, and we would like to use any video footage that is generated by EIMA to share with the media as well as architectural audiences. This can be done through a different number of ways as well as direct mail pieces.
Yeah, and going into direct mail, last year one of the things that we did that we took a lot of time to work on was to really identify the top 500 architects in some of the bigger firms and generate a list that we could really utilize. So we would like to do another direct mail this year that focuses on getting the different messages out to those architects and really, can also target media. That's a really great tool to get some messaging out.
So MESH. I'm not sure how many of you have been familiarized with the MESH campaign. We did talk about it briefly last year for those of you who were there. So we are pushing that forward more in the coming year. We've really worked closely with EIMA and the Advocacy Board to kind of create this campaign. We have a new blog post that should be debuting soon to show the benefits of MESH and the durability that it can help provide. There should also be an article in Architectural Products appearing pretty soon, again, regarding the MESH and why it's important to the structure.
Also a video series. That'll be important as another educational tool to kind of get the messaging out about MESH. Really some expert testimonials and durability tests.
A webinar. These can be, obviously, we've all sat on them, educational periods of time where we have people, we have experts talking about the different components of MESH, how to make the MESH. With webinars, kind of going back to the podcast, you can take them and break them out into podcasts. So again, as a different way to get the information out there and really educate. The key to this campaign has been the education piece, and so we're looking at all the different channels that we can do that through.
And webinars are really effective too when we can bring in the media as well as any sort of expert panels and EIMA members. So that can really help grow and promote the webinars.
Infographics, obviously, we really
like
like
them.
those. So we are talking about creating an infographic that reinforces the idea that mesh matters and the campaign theme. And it provides sort of a informative diagram that people can use as a checklist to determine that all of the correct boxes are checked, durability, proper finish coat, warranty, etc.
And so that's where we're going in 2017. And if anybody has any questions or comments, we'd love to take those now.
So last year we also asked everyone, and we're doing it again, if there's any information, projects, anything like that, please do send it our way. We are always looking for ideas and stories to put out there. Yes.
Ladies, great presentation. Good question. Whether on the infographics or on the blog posts, what has been the feedback that either y'all or I guess the manufacturers have gotten from the 500 architects, the targeted audiences of this campaign?
So I can say that through media that we've contacted, they've been really interested in the topics that we've put in front of them. We target a lot of the architectural pubs, as you saw, and they felt like it's a strong topic for their audience, and that's where we've been able to secure some of these articles. The infographics have been interesting. I think it's things that people don't necessarily know, and that's part of the campaign, is that it's a hit that's hiding in plain sight. And so it's this information that we're able to provide them about the products that they don't think of necessarily. So it's kind of shining a new light on it.
And also that continued education, really getting the facts out there is really what we're trying to do. We'll probably do that as well within the direct mail. So.
Have we seen any feedback where, okay, somebody reads the infographic and they either then contact EIMA or they contact one of the four manufacturers and say, hey, I got a question about this. Feedback like that?
No, we haven't received that feedback, but hopefully it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, if there's any more imagery or anything for case studies, that would be wonderful. We're always looking to kind of evolve that. So. Well, we'll be around all session today too and tonight, so if anybody has any other questions, just feel free to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you so
guys
much
for having us again. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Function. Well done. Well, I like the campaign on the Mesh Matters. I think that in a broader, bigger scope, it really makes people concentrate, just really not on mesh, but all bootleg products. And one of the main things we have to do in this business is we have to police our own industry. And having bootleg mesh and bootleg base coat and bootleg products being misrepresented in the market should not be allowed. And we should all work very, very hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that was great. Great job. Very good. Next, I'd like to ask Jim Willinger of Vinyl Corp to come up. Is Jim here? Here's Jim. And Jim's going to announce our next guest speaker.
Well, we're glad to be back here again this year and introducing and sponsoring the keynote speaker for the EIMA meetings. Our keynote speaker joined the construction industry at age 16 and now brings 45 years of contracting and consulting experience to his presentation. Dr. Tom Schleifer has Bachelor of Science and Master's of Science degrees in construction management from East Carolina University, a PhD also in construction management from Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, Scotland. Dr. Schleifer's experience includes serving as foreman, field superintendent, and project manager. He also has served as the vice president of a general contracting company, which he owned with his brother. From 1976 to 1986, he was the founder and president of the largest international consultancy firm serving the contract surety industry. During this period, he assisted in the resolution or salvage of hundreds of distressed or failed construction firms and projects. This vast amount of experience has led Dr. Schleifer to develop a groundbreaking project selection tool that provides a measurement of potential success at the project selection stage based on what is known and not known about the potential job and how well the project matches the firm's experience. Today, we are proud to welcome Dr. Schleifer in his presentation, Be a Hero, Choose Only Profitable Work. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Schleifer.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I like to be with people that are building this country. I missed that since I retired. I'm semi-retired, and construction people are our own kind of people. I don't have to tell you that. Most of our best friends are in the construction business. What I'm bringing to the meeting today is a belief that I found late in life. I was a building contractor for many years, and then I handled failed projects for as many years. And it's no fun at all handling failed projects. Most of you probably already know that the construction industry is the second highest failure rate of any industry in the nation. And you're probably curious about the first. The highest is restaurants, the food business. And back where I'm from in New Jersey, I had a lot of contractor friends that did really well in the construction business. What's the first thing they did? They buy a restaurant. And I'm not convinced they wanted to be in the food business as much as they didn't want to be in the second most risky business. They wanted to be in the first. I'm not risk averse. It's going to sound like I am. We're risk takers. If you're in this industry, there's some risk to it. And that's where our success comes from, and it works. But things have structurally changed. When I went in the business in the 60s with my brother, I'll be embarrassed to tell you the kind of profits we marked up the work. Any of the more mature people in the business remember those years. We could make a mistake by 5% and still make a good profit. It was just construction in heaven. Well, those margins have been structurally decreased over the years, which has added the challenge to our business, making it much more difficult. Back then, a couple of dumb carpenters could make a good living, and my brother and I did. So I know what I'm talking about. Then I had the fortunate change in career to finish failed projects, and I did that all over the country, nationwide and an international division, and learned an awful lot about the causes of business failure in our industry, which was the subject of my first book, Construction Contractor Survival Guide. That database was fascinating. 1,244 separate failed construction enterprises, which brought available knowledge on what are the causes, what are the primary causes. I took those causes and carried it forward to study what else can we learn from it. And I have a kind of an expression I use: we need to bring some science into our businesses, into our industry, simply because the margins have shifted. We didn't need it in the 60s. There was plenty of money to go around and we could make plenty of mistakes and do it trial and error. Now, we just are forced to be more careful. So I lucked out. I sold my business, the failure business, I call it, the one that finished projects for bonding companies, early in life, and needed a second career. And I went, got a PhD, and taught in the university system, but I really got caught up in the research aspects and spent the last 15 years as a half-time professor at ASU, research professor as opposed to a teaching professor, although I did teach some classes. What fascinated me is the study of history, study of what's happened, tells us what the future is. And it's pretty clear, and I was fascinated by it. And quite frankly, if I knew back what I know now, back when my brother and I were in business, I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be living on a private island somewhere and wouldn't have to work. The idea that we can go back and solve some of our issues and move some of the risk out of our business is fascinating. Now, the problem with it is, as construction people like myself, I don't want any change. I'm doing fine the way it is. I don't want to hear any of this new stuff. But we're stuck with it. And the failure rate gives us a lot of motivation because those that willing to bring in new information and change with the times are those that'll do better in the long run. So we're going to run through this, unfortunately, like a classroom because it's a lot of data and I got to get through it in a hurry. Some little background on it. I spent years researching and identifying the measures of business failure. The book Construction Contractor Survival Guide is 28 years old and is now the accepted text. It's quoted everywhere as the causes of construction business failure. It developed them, enumerated them, put them out there, and they're accepted. And I took that, and it led to research on reversing failed projects. After I sold this particular business, I went in the turnaround business, turning around financially distressed construction enterprises, mostly for bonding companies. But then I also got called in to turn around separate projects, usually very big projects, mostly by bonding companies, projects that were falling apart and were going to cause bankruptcies and other disasters. And in that business, I studied why aren't we able to turn these jobs around more easily. In fact, very few of them actually turned around. Now, the turnaround was measured as the job would be going along in trouble, and then I was expected to go in and not only get it out of trouble, but have it make money, which means I'd have to make up for the loss that was already there. Didn't realize when we started it what an impossible task it was. Let's give it some description. Failed project, a project going bad. First of all, they're already half done. And I don't have to tell you why they're half done, because in the first half, all our jobs make money. Then we get to the second half, and the numbers catch up with us. And if a job's good, the catch-up is very pleasant. And if the job hasn't been running so great, the catch-up of those numbers then notifies us. So it's too late. And we went through these and discovered that it's incredibly difficult to reverse troubled projects and even expensive just to manage them. And I have to admit that most of these did not turn around and make profit, and many of them, the businesses that were involved in them, they were so far under that it took the companies with them. One of the reasons I didn't stay in that business that long is it's pretty sad working with contractors that have been around for a long time, good people that know what they're doing, and then find themselves in a distressed situation. These people knew what they were doing. I wasn't smarter than any of the contractors that I worked with in the failure business. I can assure you of that. I had the luxury of Monday morning quarterbacking. I was there after the fact, paid to find out why it happened and to attempt to cure it. And then later went into research where I said, all these things were so difficult. What would have been the cure? Is there any research, anything we can learn to tell us how this may have worked better? It's almost impossible to eliminate the damage once done and difficult to minimize the cost. I probably don't have to tell you that. Most of us have experienced it. And discovered that the cause of project failure are inexperience with the exact type of work, project, or process. We looked for the causes, and they were fairly simple. They were one. And gaining experience the hard way is the problem, not the solution. Often we take work in a different area, different place, different size projects for a first time, and we're glad about it. We need the work. And we want to expand our enterprise. The problem is, it increases the risk because we haven't done it before. And that's where we found these failures, and we were looking for a cure. The solution we discovered was prevention. I can't know early enough in a complicated business if the job's going bad. And by the time it goes, I do know it's too late. So I don't want to have these bad jobs. The only way is not to have taken them. I know that sounds silly and a little far-fetched, but we're going to get into it in detail. Prevention was the solution. The Projects we were involved in, someone could have done them. A different contractor would have loved it. How many times you've been second bidder on something and watched it go bad and say, you could have done that? And half the time we're right, because that contractor didn't have the exact experience we had when they attempted it. Well, let's stop and take a break, because this stuff gets a little heavy when you're talking about failed construction businesses. We don't even want to talk about it. Pop quiz. Pick one project from any prior year to today, that you wish you hadn't taken. No show of hands. Those of you that don't have one, that's great. Most of us have one we wish we didn't take. Have you got it? Got the project? Need to have it in your mind. If you say you have one, you're saying in effect, you wish you didn't take that job. I wish that given year that I was a smaller business and more profitable. So not taking a losing job has great advantage. The problem is most of us don't want to be smaller. We went out and took those jobs because we wanted them. We were expanding. No one told us in advance that one could be a dog. Research confirmed there are no bad projects. It took 2.5, almost 3 years to decide that prevention was the only solution we could find. And by the way, I call this my research. One of the reasons I worked half-time at ASU is you have to have access to graduate students. They do all the work. So when I say we, I'm talking about myself and a whole bunch of really smart young people earning their own PhD in construction management. Anyway, it took me another 3 years, because actually I've been with these academics too long. When I was a contractor, trust me, I could fabricate in a minute. I could lie like a rug. How long is it going to take? 2 weeks. Why is that extra, that cost? Oh, it's complicated. It's really a problem. This is messing up the whole job. Got a lot of reasons for that. But in the academic world, in the research, we have to have proof of any time we make a statement of fact. As a matter of fact, I've been with them so long that I'm in the habit, if I tell you my opinion, I'll say it's my opinion. To say there are no bad projects took 3 years of working with some really bright graduate students to demonstrate by academic standards that that's true. Now that should be a little bit of a surprise to us. And again, in research, we do it in little increments. We need to learn certain things and stack them up and follow the dots. There are no bad projects. Well, a bunch of us in the room was thinking of a project we wish we didn't have. It was a bad project for us. There are no inherently bad construction projects. There's just a bad match between the contractor and the project. That's a huge step. Prior to this, I believed that there were bad projects. I built some of them. They get built. They just get built for a loss. And I said to myself, the second, third, the fifth bidder would have lost money on this job. It was a bad job. It wasn't going to make money. It rained. It didn't rain. Whatever the reasons, no one could have made money on it. When in fact, I was wrong, because there are no bad projects. There's the mix, the match of us taking projects that are just a little different enough to cause us to be concerned about them. I used to think when I was in the business with my brother, before any research, that my score was about 1 in 10. For every 9 good jobs I had, profitable, I had a loser. And my problem with it was they were indiscriminate. Sometimes I'd be on a small job, and sometimes it would be a large job. I was so believing in it to the point where if I had 13, 14 really good jobs, I was scared to death. I said, there's a bad job out there with my name on it. I'd be telling my brother, don't bring in any big work because there's a loser out there. And if I had a job losing money, I was fine. You could bring in whatever you want. I got my loser behind me for this year. Now, don't let anyone else see. From the front here, I can see those of us smiling, we've done this. There are losers in our book of business, and I used to believe that was just a firm part of the construction industry. If you're going to be in this business, you're going to do losing jobs. That's how you earn the right to do profitable jobs, was what I believed. Project failures don't just happen. These jobs are deliberately pursued and captured. Those of us that had a loser that we were thinking of in the pop quiz, let's go backwards and say how happy we were when we got that sucker. Right? We celebrated that. And then it turned out not to be the project we wanted it to be. So project experience is the key, but it's a paradox of industrial proportion. Our experience in the work we do, and I'm talking mature businesses. Let me give you a little sketch of the database that we're using. 1,244 failed companies, 40% second generation or older, 6% third generation companies. So the failure rate is indiscriminate as to size. Having been in business a long time guarantees us nothing. The risk, the second highest risky business in the country, needs to be managed continuously, because that one big loser is just too hard on us in today's tight margins. And we don't run out of cash. These companies did not run out of cash, they ran out of credit. Their banks or bonding companies stopped supporting them. And most of us, without that support, we'd have problems. Those of us that are subs, we'd have problems when the GC ran out of credit. So there are a lot of other ways to go out of business than just having a losing job. It's just being on a bad project when everybody gets hurt because things go wrong on it. So it's a paradox of industrial proportion, and a fair question for us would be, if experience is critical to success, how do I get that experience? That's right, that's like, if you haven't done this kind of work before, we don't want you on our job. Does that mean I'm forever barred from doing that kind of work? When am I going to have my first one and second one to gain the experience? So it's a fair question, and we all feel the same way about it. You buy experience. Knowledge and experience is purchased. That's a problem, because sometimes it's expensive. There is a cure. It's never free, and there are risks associated with it, so we need to expect the unexpected. So before I get into how do we screen out the losing jobs, I want to reinforce for us that we can expand, we should expand, we can take work we've never taken before, we can take work in a different geographic area and different sizes. We just have to bring a little science to it and say, what are the guidelines that make it safe for my company? Not that raise the odds a little bit and say, okay, it's worth a try, that make it safe and doable. The solution, manage the risk by starting small. The companies, and I keep coming back to this database, I'm telling you, if any one of you had gone in on this many failed businesses, you'd be jaundiced about our industry. They were sad cases. The idea of taking a job larger than anything we've ever done has huge risk associated with it. Just size alone was the major element in contractor business failure. And why would that be? We need to consider size and risk together. All of us, I won't say all of us, 90% of us have a service mix, is what I call it, a mixture of work with a whole bunch of little jobs on the bottom, right? Nuisance work, some of us call it, but it pays the rent. Then we have mid-sized jobs. The mid-sized jobs are jobs that anyone in the company can estimate, anyone can do. They are no threat to us. It's what we do. It's our bread and butter. And it makes, as a percentage of profit, a little bit less than the small jobs, right? Small jobs, nuisance work, high profit as a percent of sales, just not enough dollars to satisfy us. Medium-sized jobs make a little less as a percentage of sales, but more dollars. Then we have, and we're always looking for and glad to get them, 2, 3, 4, I'm talking about per year, big jobs. Big, we've done one that size before, but they're in the high end. How do I define them? We stay up all night the night before the bid. We're afraid of them. Everybody in the company is not necessarily qualified to do it or to bid it, and we're really on top of it. We've already selected who's going to be the foreman or superintendent, project manager, depending on size job and how you man them ahead of time, because people in these mid-sized jobs, every one of those can't do this big one. So that's what I define as big jobs. However, they make, as a percent of sales, not dollars, less money than the mid-size, which makes less money than the small. So size is critical. I only have 2 or 3 of them. But when a job goes bad, I don't have to tell you this. If we can mark it up 10%, and I hope most of us could, but in this market, I don't know too many people that are, but let's use round figures. If we could mark a job up 10%, have the opportunity to make that much profit, if it starts losing, and it's going down by 4%, 5, gets to 7, 9, hits 10%, seems to me that our contracts ought to say, we turn to the owner and say, we've lost as much as we were possibly going to gain, we're out of here. But we have to finish it. And bad jobs have no respect for the limits and sometimes go down on us by 13, 15, 20%. And that impact, they didn't have that much in them to begin with, on the larger job in dollars starts to eat up all of the money that was involved in the mid-size and the small ones. If we had to finish the project before we're completed, before attempting another. The case I always use, and I've got war stories for every one of these. You don't have 1,200 failed businesses and not have seen it. But the classic one was a 3rd-generation company in central Pennsylvania. And by the way, there's a big confidentiality problem with the kind of work that I did. So the only thing you can be certain, if I say it was central Pennsylvania, it wasn't. I have to move the things, but I need to get some detail in my head in order to remember them. This company did sewage treatment plants, small ones, additions, deep pumping stations. They had a motto, the uglier the better. They were really good. 3rd generation, and they had already gone through a management transition where a non-family member was president of the company. They had no family members in the 3rd generation that wanted to be part of the business, which is a huge step in itself for any of us that are transferring ownership or management. The failure rate in our industry for the transition of ownership and or management is 56%. Half don't make it. High risk of changing. This company had made a switch, not only profitable and successful, but to non-family membership, which is really tough in a family business. I don't want any show of hands because I know a little about family businesses, and I suspect there's some in the room. So just to reinforce that I know something about family businesses, I'll give you one secret that you already know. In every family business in our industry, there is at least one idiot cousin that shouldn't be there. And don't start looking at each other. And then I see people poking them and they're mentioning the name. I can't quite make out the name because he's back at the office doing nothing, by the way. At any rate, we got to finish the project before we complete it. This company, this is way back in the 80s, was doing, to make up numbers, $3 million jobs. Had 2 or 3 at the highest of their jobs. Mid-size were below that. They take a $5 million sewage treatment plant. That job is along about 5 months. They take a 5.5. That job's along 4 months, and they take a 7.1. The problem is, the second bidder on the 7.1 was $8.9 million. So the surety sends us in, we have to tear it apart, looking for errors and what have you. At any rate, it put the company out of business. The second bidder was right, it was a $9 million job. And the 5.5 job broke even, the 5 million went under by 6%. Why do I put up there we take one and complete it? This company was a $3 million. You ask a company, what size jobs do you do? Well, we do jobs up to $3 million. Typically, we lie a little and say 4. If we've done the 3, we'll say 4. At least if you're from New Jersey. I apologize to Midwesterners and the Westerners, a little more honest. In New Jersey, we always exaggerated by at least that percentage. At any rate, he'd say he was a $3 million contractor, and he was. Third generation, made money every year. Not saying he made money every job, but made money every year. Had he taken the $5 million job, and it didn't profit, it lost as it did, he probably wouldn't have taken the next 5. But as soon as he took the 5 and celebrated getting the job, he took a 5.5, and before even the first one was done, he took a 7.1, which turned out to be a 9. Everybody with me? He didn't test the job. First of all, it wasn't small, so he violated that rule. Secondly, he didn't test whether we were doing well at that size. And I used to sit in audiences just like this, and I'd look at a guy sitting next to me, and I'd say, this guy does twice as much work as I do, and he's a dunce. I don't know how he does this, but he's been doing it before. And I'm saying, I could do that, and I'm wrong, but I don't know it. We grow in increments. You say it's the exact same kind of work. It's just not 3 million, it's 5. No, the risk has moved into a different place, into a different size. Retainage has never been greater in one place. Cash flow's affected. It's different even if we do know how to do it. But if we've never estimated one that size, first of all, in a good job in our mid-size, what's the odds that we're going to get the number right every time? No show of hands. In a job larger than we've ever done before, what's the odds we're going to get it right? A little less, because we haven't done it. But we get awarded it because we don't know that much about it. What are the odds we're going to do it well? So, because sometimes in my mid-sized jobs, which we do every day and we know what we're doing, sometimes one of those loses. And I know all about those. I'm in a little bit stranger territory when I get into the other size. The reason I'm spending so much time on size, if I can convince you that size is a threat, then the other elements that I'm going to talk about, different geographic area, different type of work and what have you, are even greater. Whoops. Attempt only what we can afford to lose. There's the secret. If I can convince anyone in this audience, and if it's only one, I've won, that the risk of a bad job is greater than we think, then attempting only what we could afford, if you'd say, you know, there's 3 of us, we're partners. We're not sure about this one. And what would happen if everything went wrong on it? You can already figure out what that loss would be. And if you can afford that loss, fine. It's a safe job, because it might be a home run too. I'm not taking that off the table. I'm simply saying that I've already figured out if I take this one, it's a little strange, it's a little different area, a little different size, but I can afford, if everything goes wrong, I can afford it. It's not going to tank my company. So it's just one other step in my decision process. We wanted to measure pre-project risk. First of all, in research, and this you don't even need to know this, it's of useless information except to us researchers, project risk is different than pre-project risk. Another breakthrough that took a long time, because I went into it assuming they were the same. The risks exist before we take the project, the risks exist the same measurement when we sign the contract, and during construction the risks are the same. They are not continuous. Pre-project risk and project risk are 2 different elements. There are 3 critical elements in whether we're going to succeed. We measured them, and we turned out to be experience. The second one was experience. And then we found the third one was experience. That's how the process of elimination worked. I know it's just cute, but I have to go through it because that's what we found in the data. Measurement issues. Unlike manufacturing, where improvements result from repetition, There are manufacturers in here, and we ought to corner them and ask them at the cocktail party. Manufacturers have an advantage in productivity that we'll never have in construction, and that is they decide to make something they've never made before, and they set up a bunch of pieces of equipment to make this product. Right? Never made it before. It's a whole unique production line. Then they stand back and watch it, and on average in manufacturing, the increase in productivity of a brand new product that was never made before in 6 months is triple. They watch the machine and start adjusting it and fixing it. And in manufacturing, 6 months more, it's tripled again. So, do we have that opportunity in construction? If we could get 10% better in the field, I'd be thrilled, let alone twice as rapid. So we have that exposure, that our experience is very unique on each project simply because there isn't enough repetition. The construction risks are unique in themselves, but there's just not enough repetition or duplication. And that limits our learning. We say, well, I did one like that. Yeah, when Granddad was running the business. Right? The continuous repetition just doesn't happen for us, even if there is some repetition. Limited replication narrows experience. And we have to talk about direct experience. The more similar a project is in size, location, design, the more likely estimated performance will be achieved. There weren't that many years ago that I used to say the more likely we would beat estimating performance. I've changed the slide. When I was a young contractor and my brother working together, there were home runs in our book of business. We had that 1 in 10 loser. We had a bunch of profitable jobs, and every now and then we'd hit one out of the park. And my comment that we'd achieve or exceed bid profit, I've taken off the table. They aren't there anymore. Competition in our industry is just such that if we get a home run, whatever you do, don't tell anybody else. They're not there. They were there all the time. For that loser in 10 that I had 1 in 20, just went out of the park. Different business, different environment that we need to understand and accept. Because the planning and execution is more of the same if we've done it before, as opposed to totally unique. Analyzing experience. Experience is accumulated institutionally but captured individually. This just makes it even that more difficult for us. I'm saying if we haven't done, we, the company, that kind of work before, there's some risk. Okay, we have done it before, but I'm not putting the same people on the estimate and production of it. So I'm not bringing the institutional experience forward unless I'm bringing the people who it's housed in, which complicates what we're talking about already. The number of team members with direct experience in similar projects is important. Why am I spending all this time on this without going into the system that's been developed? There's a program I'm going to show you that screens out losers. I'm telling you, it works. Why don't I just go to that? Because most of us won't use it until we figure out that we need it. We're sitting there not afraid of losing jobs. I was never afraid of losing jobs. I measured it. I said it's about 1 in 10. So what? I'm tough. Until we're afraid of losing jobs, we aren't going to actually change behavior and say, I want to screen them out. And can dramatically impact the likelihood of achieving planned or improved performance. Improved snuck in there. It's one of those graduate students, a little ambitious. Pre-project risks are directly associated with an organization's experience with similar work. This separates the slight difference between project experience and pre-project experience. Therefore, project risks are different for every contractor. There's the answer. It comes back to when I said there are no bad projects. Then, if we were going to be able to measure it, which we have figured out how to measure, then it's going to be different, each contractor we measure it with. We can't say this job has an X amount of likelihood of success. We can only say it has X amount for this contractor, has Y amount for that contractor, has Z amount for that contractor. It's different for every contractor. And how can I say those things? We go out and get what we call a statistically significant number of data points. In my case, 1,000 contractors that their data was put into these discoveries. However, the risk associated with project selection can be measured. The project selection program, we're going to get into what this risk measurement and the one bad job and why we want to screen it out. It leads to something I call the 80-20 effect. 1,244 separate failed construction companies. Actually, we had another 400 or 500 that were SBA or that weren't in business 10 years. Any that weren't in business 10 years, we did not include in the database. So it's more like 1,600, but I only counted 1,244 in these measurements. We looked at the companies that went out of business and we said, how much bad work, how much did they have to lose before being forced into insolvency? It's a fair question because a lot of us have had bad jobs and we're still here, myself included. So one bad job isn't going to knock me out, typically, unless it's one of my really big ones and really goes bad. So we went and looked at that measurement, and it turned out, on average, 20%, 19.7 actually, but that's of no interest to us, 20% losing work was the trigger point. None that had 20% losing work in a given year, now I'm talking third generation company, never had it until that 1 year, and then became insolvent. And by the way, any of those companies were smaller than bigger than bigger than bigger when it happened. So almost every failure we dealt with was at their largest they had ever been, which made them think they were at their safest they had ever been. So, am I saying don't have any losers? I don't think it's possible. Am I saying we have found a trigger point? Do not have 20% losers or you're finished. That's measured in dollars, not numbers of jobs. How do I know that? I got 1,000 data points. Now, maybe you could get to 20 and that year not be put out of business. Great. And if the following year is a good year, maybe it'll work. I don't want to fool with those odds, particularly in closely held and family businesses. So the 80-20 is a real threat. So how much do we want? Well, I'd take 10%. Then I'm thinking that, well, if I made less, maybe I'll take 5% and I make more money. Now I start to get inclined to have none. I like to have no losers in my book of business. Well, if I'm inclined to that, I'm going to be smaller. Unless there's a huge market out there that's going to replace the jobs I refuse to look at or don't go after, then I'm going to be smaller. I'm going to make more money, period. Not as a percentage of sales, more dollars, because I'm going to stop giving back money I've already made. So it's a real paradigm shift, and it's a threat. Most of us believe in growing. My brother and I said to each other constantly, if you're not growing, you're going backwards. Every year we intended to be bigger than the year before. That's what our business was about. We were measuring it in sales, not in profitability. The project selection program, we're going to talk about it in a little bit of detail. Well, I am doing good. Question: would a process that screens out losing projects enhance our profitability? There's a free, easy-to-use tool. This tool has been developed. That came out in Engineering News Record November, I think it was 20-something, mid-November, and it's in one of the articles you have, and if not, it's the link is available and it's free. But it'll cause us to screen projects out. And now we have to walk through it and say, does it make any sense to you? What I asked 50 contractors in the beta test to do 50 friendlies. Take this program and run it on 3 projects. 3 projects that you've already completed. 2 that you liked, and 1 you wish you didn't have. And the results came back not favorably like 85 or 90%, 100%. I didn't get 1 back that said it didn't predict them. The answer was it predicted the ones that were going to be good, that they would be good, and the one that was going to be bad, that it would be bad. Am I suggesting you use this program? No. I'm suggesting you test it on 3 projects that you've already done, 1 you didn't like, and see what the answer comes up. If it's not predictive, I wouldn't use it. It can also be used as a checklist. I know my audience because I am my audience. The advantage I have with these young PhD students is I was there. I made my living. I made enough money to put myself through school at night out of an industry that I love, and I know how it works. And if we don't want to use it because it's clicking buttons and it's too newfangled and I don't trust it to begin with, I suggest we use it as a checklist, because the contractors I interviewed during this process, and I say a bunch of students with clipboards, that were asked about these elements, the answer was, we do all this intuitively. We just know how to do it. That's how we pick jobs. I know which jobs to go after and which not, was the continuous answer. All I'm saying is, let's use it as a checklist, because that attitude throughout our industry hasn't worked well for us. So we got to make sure we've thought about each experiential item. Not, it looks good to us, it weighs good, I like the size of the plans, it smells good, or whatever other selection method we're using, because we're too busy. The job's there, it's available, and I need the work. I don't want to screen it too hard, because the next thing you know, I won't want it. And I already want it, and I don't want to change that. Here's the program. When you go on the link, this will download, you own it. I can say that you can download it every time you need it, or just copy it and store it, but I'd check it around every 6 months because it gets updated. Up in the top line there, you see V1.1. It's had 1 modification since it was put in place, and that's from feedback from contractors like yourself that say there's a spelling error, or you didn't have this in it, or something. We really welcome feedback. Anyway, you start out, project name, completed, up here at the top. Oops. I'm pushing the wrong button somewhere. There it is. Project name completed. If you click on the introduction, a box comes up, and it provides an introduction to the process, and one of the things it says is there are no bad projects. If you click on directions, people my age click on directions. This is so intuitive that any of the young people in the room will not click on directions. You don't need them. It's totally intuitive. It couldn't be simpler, so don't click on it. But for those of us that like to say, hear it, we click on that, and a box comes up and tells you. And if I wanted to complicate this presentation, I could have put it in there live and clicked on it, and it would come up, and I've tried it, and it's way too many wires. And I need somebody to supervise me. And here's a special element. Took months. Change the weights. Click here. There are weights. The idea of the 26 questions. What are the questions? What are the discriminators in experience that make a job appropriate or inappropriate for me? And once we isolate those, it started at about 50 and we got it down to 26. I was intent on getting it onto one page, and I just couldn't do it. Then they have to be weighted because they're not equal. One discriminator is really critical. It's important. We violate that one, our odds move dramatically. Another one is less important, but it exists, and it changes the numbers but by less, so they're weighted. Again, I say I know my audience because I am the audience. Somebody's going to go through there and say, no, this one question is really important. I've been burned by that before, and you didn't give it enough weight. So I'm not going to use it. Therefore, you click on that box, it gives you a switch, and you can change all the weights. Any and all of them, because my intention is that we use it as a checklist, and if we find something we don't like in it, change it. One of the things I did, and boy, I had to dominate the group. I had a 0 agreement from my PhD students. Absolutely not. If we're so confident in these weights and we've tested them for 3 years, as you demanded, then nobody's going to change them. Anyway, I said we are. On the right here where it says default weights, those agree with the weights that are in the white column. If you're going to change your weights, you're going to change the white column. It opens up and the whole program is now modified. Those weights are there deliberately so that if we change it a lot, say we take the 10 here and make it a 12, when we look at the sheet, we see that we've moved it 2 points. Say we make it a 20, we've moved it double. It just keeps us looking at what the default is and what we have decided. And you're perfectly welcome to decide it. Obviously, you own it. The problem is the default weights are the same as asking 1,000 contractors, what would you say? Is it us that is going to decide what the weight is, or are we going to use the average of 1,000 responses? That's the only question, and I'm not even saying it's right. If I was saying it was right, I'd agree with the graduate students, and you wouldn't be able to change it. But I'm so anxious that we use it that we can change it. Anyway, you click on any of these, you click on this question. Here, the first one is the firm successfully completed projects this size. Any surprise that the first one is size? I already went into my concern in the research on size. It's a killer. And it's up there in the higher points. If you click on the box, another box comes up and gives you a whole paragraph explaining the question. I think they're intuitive. We worked a long time. They've all been changed a lot. If anyone wants to click on every box, it's easy to do. When we get to the bottom, there's a click that'll just bring them all up, and they'll be full. They're no longer one sentence, they're paragraphs. We could read them. Obviously, if we decide to use it, after a while, we wouldn't have to because we'd fully understand the questions. As the firm successfully type, geographic area, these are the primary causes in the book, Construction Contractors Survival Guide. And by the way, I don't recommend that book. It's 28 years old. In 2014, I came out with another book that updated those causes. And it may surprise you that there are some that went away. In fact, half of them went away. I'll digress just long enough because I seem to have the time to caution you. If you want to know the causes of business failure, use the 2014 book because there's only 5 primary causes. In the first book, there were 10. There were 5 experiential, which still exist, and there were 5 fiscal. And they're no longer there. They're explained in the second book why they're no longer there. But it was elements like failure to use appropriate accounting systems. When the book was written, 90% of us were still on handwritten accounting systems. Then we went through a horrible time in our industry of which program was going to work. The ones that didn't work, we picked another one. If any of you went through the selection process, it was a nightmare. But today, all of them work, and we don't lose the data like we did before. So it's no longer a primary cause. Why was it a cause then? Because we went in on companies that had lost control of their data and lost their suretyship. One company, first generation, but 20 years old, good builders, never had a losing year in their life, had plenty of losing projects like all of us do, but had very profitable. They changed from a handwritten, typical back then, accounting system to computerized. Well, they ran them parallel for only 3 months, and they finished the year out with the computer system, and it wouldn't close, a term accountants use, and the outside CPAs would not issue a financial statement. They couldn't get the data they needed, required by GAAP rules, generally accepted accounting practice rules, so they couldn't issue a financial statement. Well, surety expected it 90 days after the fiscal year, 100 days, 150. At 160 days, what are they supposed to suspect? You're not giving me a financial statement for last year. What do I think? That you don't want me to see it, that it's really bad, and that you're using the outside accountant to say they can't get it. So they call their bonding, 100% bonded company, highway builder. So they're out of business overnight. No bonds, no business. We go in, as directed by the surety, and take over the company, take over the signing power. They were very well organized. We allowed them to do all the work without interference. We simply superimposed supervision and financial control over them. They couldn't spend anything. We had to sign the checks. And we're in there 4 or 5 weeks, and the guy had a couple of people in the accounting department. My accounting people that were in there are saying the computer system's not going to give us the answer. And I said, our client's demanding an answer. I said, stop working with that stupid computer, and all of you guys go back to last year, take the 3 months that they ran parallel and carry forward from original documents the entire year and give me an income and balance sheet. Finally talked the contractor into abandoning I said, you're going out of business. So put your accountants with mine, we'll get it done faster. The outside accountants say, we're not going to certify it. I said, I'm not asking you to certify it. I'm not even asking you to look at it. My client wants an answer, I'm giving them an answer. I'm certifying it. You're not an accountant. Lucky me. We carry it forward. Takes about 10 or 11 days. And I'm there because we need the results and the client is screaming. And they made profit more than the prior year. Perfectly good company. So I called the bonding guy. I said, I got some good news and some bad news. One of my favorites. I said, the good news is there's no loss in this company. They're perfectly profitable. The guy on the phone who sent me there, he says, then what are you doing there? And I was polite enough not to say, you sent us here. And that's the bad news. We've taken over this company for 7 weeks. We've practically ruined it because in the marketplace, it isn't bidding because it has no bid bonds, and we're in trouble. Now, I'll just throw a New Jersey angle in. He says, what are we going to do? I said, give me $300,000 in authority. He said, you got it. Go right into the contractor. Hung up the phone, go right into the contractor, sit down. I said, we're leaving. When? That's all he wants to know. It's his first words, when? I said, as soon as we come to terms. He said, what terms? I said, well, you signed an agreement that allowed us in here, which he had no choice. I said, and now we got to unsign it. I got to give you a release. He said, give it to me. I'll sign it. Leave. I said, we've damaged you some. He said, I'll say. I said, we want to compensate you for that. Stops him in his tracks. Looks at me, thinks a minute. Contractor, you know the answer. How much? First thing out of his mouth. Guy had a way with words. Didn't waste any. I said, $150,000. He said, when do I get it? I said, tomorrow morning when you sign the document. He said, certified? I said, certified check. We cut the deal. Now, from those of you from New Jersey, you know why. From those of you that aren't, you're asking, why did I ask for $300,000 and offer him $150,000? I could have settled it for $50,000. I just wanted the client happy. I gave the guy 3 times what I could have settled it for, and the client saved 50%, and everybody was happy. And he was entitled to it because we really did him damage. I didn't do him damage. Cutting off his surety did him damage. And they had a perfect right to do it, because outside of the protocol of having the financial statement. But he needed to be helped and made whole because of the damage that was done. Anyway, still in business today, does a fine job, never did lose money, but the answer is you gotta have numbers and control of your data, and you gotta screen out these losers. Okay, next section. Has the firm successfully completed projects with this owner, GC, CM, representatives, or investors? By the way, I hope you noticed the last one there. Have we completed it with the owner? Have we done work successfully for the owner, GC, or CM? Any of us ever had trouble with a GC for the 3rd time? Wonder why we keep working for that company? The questions are relevant. This now says, with the representatives. Any ever asked who's going to run the job before you want to turn your price in? Because a good contractor has some really good field people and some mediocre ones. And every time you're on one with the mediocre one, you don't do as well because the job is not run properly. So one of the questions, now it's only 2 points, but above the question about whether we've worked for them corporately, and now the next question is the people we're going to put on it, have they worked for it, or the people that they have on it. There's only 2 points, but it's actually 12 total. It's hard hit. Those 2 add to the 10 above. Has the firm successfully completed projects with this designer, architect, engineer? I'm sure there's nobody here saying, well, why is that there? Makes a difference. Makes a difference in whether the initial design is any good, which we can judge pre-project, but we can't judge how we're going to get answers during the project unless we've done work for them before. And later, we're going to ask, is the designer's team that we're familiar with? And we want to see how that's starting to unfold, what that connection is. It tries to capture the likelihood of success. No guarantees. It's trying to measure the likelihood of success. As a firm our firm anticipated field team, obviously we don't know who the field team is all the time. And if you're like me, sometimes you guarantee the owner one field team and you bait and switch and put another one, which I knew I was going to do the whole time, but he wanted that certain one. So the anticipated team have they built this size, type, location? Now you're answering these questions, and what's happening up top, let's just go back to the beginning, is that 50% in the top corner you opened with. And we got to understand why it opens with 50%. There's a job in your area, and it's going to have an exterior skin of EIFS. That's all you know about it. Are you interested in it? Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I do. I don't know who it is. I don't know what size it is, right? I've never done anything over 2 stories, and it's 20. I don't know anything about it. What are the chances that this job is going to be attractive to you? Statistically, they're 50-50. Ignorance generates 50-50. My grad students kept saying, stop using that word. I said, my audiences are grown-up people. Ignorance is a 50-50. Now I learn a little more, right? The sucker's a 4-story, and I've done 6 and 10, right up my alley. I don't know who the designer is yet, but I like the size. My odds have gone up. Everybody with me? They're not skyrocketed, they're just a little better. Now I find out it's a GC that stuck me 3 times over. I hate working for him. My odds have gone down. So knowledge moves the likelihood of success as a statistical reality, which started at 50-50. Anybody got any challenge for that? I realize I talk very fast. I'm from New Jersey originally. Sometimes we don't even use the words. We just say, bada-beep, bada-beep, you know what I mean. So that gives the impression like I don't want interruptions or questions. Really, I should have said this sooner. Please interrupt me if I'm going somewhere you want to ask or challenge. That's fine with me. But the 50-50 is important that we understand where it came from and why it's there. And if it's going to be of any use to us, we have to understand that that's a reality. You start, if you don't know anything about it, it might be good, it might not be good. It's a toss-up. And as I add data, I learn. Well, the reason I went into that is when this was being developed, there was 10 possible answers, 1 to 10, then there was 1 to 5. I ended up with 3, because if you put often, that number, 50%, is going to go up. If you put never, it's going to go down. If you put few, it's not going to move. And I have people ask me all the time, how many is a few? Your call. Some of us would say, I've done one like that, that's a few. Some others will say, well, there's got to be 3. 3 is a few. I don't know what a few is. It's what you answer. But it's harmless because nothing changes all the way down the middle. If there's no answer, some of them even have unknown, but if you don't answer the question, you say, this question is bull. It's meaningless. You don't hurt anything because nothing changes. Don't even click. Or do click in the middle and nothing happens. Same event. I'm just trying to explain the mechanism because it's really simple. The only question is, are those the right questions to ask, and are they properly weighted? And it's a valid question that most of us, unless you have time to go full-time searching for data, will not be able to answer. And you have only one person that's gone searching for it, so I wouldn't trust him. And he's from New Jersey. So I tested on other projects. As the firm estimating team priced it, estimating is a pretty decent science. That's, a lot of people would argue that should be higher points, because if they haven't, they're likely to make mistakes. We found some serious estimating mistakes, but fewer than anyone would ever guess. The fact that there's a lot more surface to be in a project doesn't lend to mistakes. We can measure. We get the go-in price right. In fact, our biggest problem is that there isn't enough of it. Our units don't work. If there's very little of it, we got to up the units. But estimating is not a big deal. That was tested carefully. 4 is the weight given to it. Okay, the project complexity. Here we get arguments from audiences, and I welcome them. Is the required project schedule reasonable? For a GC, that really matters. For a sub, even if it's great, is the GC going to stick to it? So, you guys have a real challenge when it comes to these. The weights are appropriate because you'll know what you know, and you won't know what you don't know. There's where the unknowns start. Yes, it's reasonable. No, it's not, and unknown. Sufficient labor available. Only 5 points. Right now, we're having labor issues all over the country. I don't know how many of you are suffering from it. But a labor issue as a project risk of profitability is a genuine measurement. Pre-project, it is not. If I know in advance I don't have enough labor, I'm going to either go ahead anyway, most likely, or add money for it, or realize I'm going to be late, or whatever. So that demonstrates why pre-project risk and project risk are different. Once I have the project, I got to build it. But pre-project have the opportunity to charge for it. Now, obviously, we don't. We're competitive and what have you, but that's one of the clear measures. There's a bunch of them, but it's different. As the firm's prior successful experience with the intended major subcontractors, vendors, etc. I realize most of us are subcontractors. Often we have subcontractors, people building scaffold. We have suppliers and vendors. It's the same weight. We worked a long time. When these questions come up in research, it's a year's delay. It's, okay, we got a new question. It's months before the question is framed. And the questions that would answer it are framed. Then we have to go out and do the survey to get the answer. So it delays it for a year. The weights came from that kind of effort. And you have the unknown. And the unknown's harmless in this, because we're not going to know everything about a project pre-project. So what we don't know allows what we do know to carry the day. Are there unusual access, room to work, parking, dust, noise, storage? Those of us that work in the suburbs don't even understand this one. Try working in the city with a zero property line, right? And the place you want to put your scaffold is on public property or a private owned property next door. I mean, there are all kinds of access issues, but pre-project, they're known. Are there unusual ground or surface water conditions? May not affect you, but certainly could affect your GC, plus you have the option of unknown. Unusual circular, curved, angled design elements. This one is more serious than anybody gives it credit. The built construction environment is rectangular. It has straight lines. For any of you that have engineering training in the room, you're right with me. We do real well on straight lines. Now we start calculating curves and oblique angles, and it's a nightmare. The designs are a nightmare, the schedule's a nightmare, and producing it's a nightmare. I built a lot of round walls, and the reason I have such a high number is many of them I tore down and built again, because they were wrong. And the second time I wasn't paid. So that's a serious issue, but it's pre-project. During project, that can be a nightmare. Pre-project, I can charge for it, I can take a risk, or what I'm asking us to be, I can be afraid of it. I'm going to take the job anyway. I'm just going to be darn careful about certain elements that this told me to look for, because I realize they're increasing my risk. Are there critical long lead items, sole source, unusual items that may delay the project? Probably doesn't matter too much for you, but if you're building a really small bank and they expect to get it done in 3 months, I guarantee you there's going to be no vault door. So you're estimating the outside in the summer, and that job's not going to be done because they're not going to have a vault door. So it starts to matter. Do you know a lot about it? There's the unknown you can leave in there. That job's not going to be done in the time frame given. Anyway, you're getting the handle on it. Financial issues, cash flow, firm's experience with the payment process of the owner. You can cash flow yourself out of business with our owners today that pay later and later and later, and then don't even get me started on GCs that pay later and later and not at all. So why is the weight as low as it is? Because it's pre-project. And then the last section, unusual assurance requirements, bonding requirements, lots of unknowns in there, contract terms, unusual indemnity issues. I find the larger companies agonize over some of this. Mid-sized companies may or may not look at it. Smaller companies, they say, what choice do I have? I'm handed the contract, I can't negotiate it, so why read it? My insurance is pretty standard. Sometimes we miss the indemnity in some of our contracts, but particularly with certain GCs, I could name them and half of you can name them. It says, you indemnify us if we give you wrong instructions. Anybody signed any of those? They're pretty clear. You, the sub, indemnify everybody for everything, even if I caused it. So, they're down there at low points, again, because they are pre-project. Now, there's 6 that didn't make the cut, and they're unusual. They don't matter whether you answer them or not. They're to bring it to your attention. Instead of having a box to bring up the explanation, they're in there. Do you believe you have a competitive edge? Ever bid on a job and know darn well that somebody, you know exactly who's going to get it? We do it for the exercise, right? Our competitor is the GC's favorite, and he always gets it. Do we have an edge? Does the competitor have an edge? What's your gut feeling? 6.4 there. Gut feeling matters a lot. In closely held companies, the question of, do we have consensus within the company about wanting a job? All right, I've filled out all the questions. I've been really careful. And I'm coming up with a 40, 45. It's not the end of the world. If it's 50-50, I'm going forward anyway. I'm a contractor. But 40, 45 is a little challenge. But nobody in the company likes this job. That may be the deal breaker. That may be, do I really want to go into this? Or I got a 40 and 45 and everybody says we can do this. I'm a little more excited about it because we're with it. As closely held companies, we need that kind of consensus. Okay, that's what it looks like. If you screen out losers, here comes the bad news, sales will fluctuate. There's no doubt about it. We'd have to organize our company to deal with the fact that we don't take every job that comes down the pike. We take the profitable ones. But profits will increase, risk will be dramatically reduced. I'm big on risk. I do whole seminars on just risk alone, measurement of it. Efficiency will increase and your core group strengthens. Many of us say, I had to take that job in this bad market to keep my people busy. I had to keep my core group together. If the core group is properly sized and we don't have losing jobs, we actually protect the core group. We can go through ups and downs with this process easier than if we are constantly taking marginal jobs to keep people busy. Oops. If you screen out losers, I did that one. To accomplish this, you need a systematic, methodical, logical project selection process, which is what I call scientific project selection. It's what I started with, it's what I'm going to end with. I realize statistics. What kind of nerve does this guy get up telling us about statistics? I think we're stuck with it. I think unless we bring some science into what used to be a fun and easy business, that's getting more and more complex every day, it's going to be more challenging, not less. So do we have to consider these kind of elements? I'm afraid we're stuck with them. Conclusion, project selection is critical. It prevents losing projects. And this program, I believe, will screen them out for you. Thanks so much, I appreciate it. I'm sorry? A which? Oh, you get it live. There's a link. It should be in one of those articles. If not, it's, it's got to be in there. No, it's in you.
It's not in there.
We have one more item to take care of before we take our first break here, and that's for us to give out our Associate Member of the Year Award. Is Joe Palumbo here with Vela Insurance? Is Joe? Could you come up on stage, Joe, and help me give out this award? This year's 2016 Associate Member of the Year for the EIFS Industry Members Association is presented to Dow Construction Chemicals. So, Dow has been an incredible sponsor of a terrific member for us. Thank you. Well deserved. Thank you. All right,